Thank you, ladies, and my excellent women colleagues. I very much welcome you all, and I also welcome the men in the room as well. It's a pleasure to see everybody here and how popular this meeting is. So I would also like to bring the meeting to order first, I guess. If we could have the attention of the room, that's fantastic. Thank you. And I would also like to warmly welcome and thank my co-chair, Ms. Malahat Ibrahimizi, and members for participating in this meeting. Interpretation is provided in English, Polish, and in Russian. In addition to my co-chair and fellow politicians, I would also like to welcome, there are a number of organizations in the room who are attending. I'd like to welcome the Women's Consortium of Ukraine, Tatiana Bayeva as a member of the board, Lyudmila Kovalchuk from La Strada, Ukraine, Irina Vertoso, Human Rights Information Center, Alina Pancheko, team leader of the USAID project, Oksana Pokolachuk, executive director of Amnesty International Ukraine, Dovil Sokit, Civil Society Forum, Hennady Maksak, Civil Society Forum, and also Svetlana Bereza, who is here with Women for Peace in Kiev. And I know a number of those people would very much welcome the chance to keep in touch with you, so at a later stage I will give them the opportunity to give contact details, or I am sure they will speak to you afterwards. Finally, on my introduction side, I would also like to welcome Mr. Lawrence Meredith, Director for Neighbourhood East, Directorate General for Neighbourhood and Enlargement Negotiations, better known as DG NEAR, from the European Commission. Mr. Martin Enberg, Head of Office for the Council of Europe in Ukraine. Ms. Irina Suslova, Chairman of the Subcommittee on Gender Equality and Non-Discrimination of the Verkhovna Rada, and of the Committee on Human Rights, National Minorities and International Relations from Ukraine. Those are my opening comments and my welcome, but I'd very much now like to hand over the chair to my co-chair.
Thank you very much, dear Moody. Good evening, good afternoon, dear friends, honorable colleagues. First of all, I would like to welcome you in the Women Forum, which takes place in the beautiful city Kiev. And I observe that among our participants, particularly female ladies, among our ladies, only a few men, and I want to say for them great thanks, because for their patience, and you show and you declare solidarity with women, with female problems. I am very sorry. Best regards for you. Of course, dear colleagues, it is first time I am attending the meeting of Women Forum, and it is a great honor for me to be here, and let me to congratulate and to thank all of you, all organizers, on the occasion of the successful establishment of Women Forum. I am very sure that newly established Women Forum will strengthen the ties among women of Eastern partner countries, and this forum will serve to ensure stability and a sustainable development in the region. As a female politician, I highly appreciate this occasion. It is reality that nowadays the current participation of women as the government structures and the decision-making process are not enough. We have to look for how to advocate women's rights, how how the women to be empowered in their government, how can we be women involved in the global and the regional cooperation, peacemaking and the conflict prevention process in Eastern Partner. In this sense, our joint effort within the Women Forum and our active participation will contribute to making successful outcomes for promoting and implementing our common goals. I do hope Women Forum will be an excellent opportunity to share different experience, to learn best practices about progress, challenges, and how to achieve on the implementation of fundamental values in Eastern Partner countries. Thank you very much for the attention. Thank you very much, Mudi. You are great.
Thank you very much, and it's been a great pleasure so far working together, and I look forward to that cooperation continuing long into the future as well. Yes. Now, without further ado, given our delayed start, I think it's important to introduce our first exchange of views of the Women's Forum today. I would like to point out that this is the second meeting of the Forum, but unfortunately, or the second planned meeting of the Forum, unfortunately, the first one was very much disrupted by, in fact, a terrorist incident that occurred in my country, as I recall. But so I'm very much glad that we now have a second forum in which to pursue these really important matters. I also do want to welcome the fact that I have far too often sat in a room where I am the only woman, even now in politics, as well as in other spheres, or also sat through debates around on women that are scheduled at the very end of meetings or in, at the end of plenaries, and frankly there aren't many of us left in the room. So I am delighted to see how many of us there still are in the room this evening, and I'm sure that is a measure of the ongoing commitment to this meeting, to this forum. It is also very clear that as we are about to talk about gender perspectives in a very specific context, I think it is also a very timely debate, given the global coverage there is in relation to women. In particular, there is a singular Hollywood mogul, but that has led to rise to a number of, a lot of coverage in other countries, again, my country being one of them. So I, once again, am delighted that we are able to focus particularly on gender perspectives this afternoon in a more positive context with a much more positive agenda as well. So on that point, I will introduce the guest that I have already spoken of, which is Lawrence Meredith, as I say, Director of Neighbourhood East in DG NEAR, who will be talking on gender perspectives in the joint staff document drafted by the High Representative, Vice President and European Commission Services on 20 deliverables for 2020. Lawrence, please.
Thank you very much to both co-chairs, and it's a privilege to be here this afternoon with you all. I think it's an extremely important topic, and as I was, on behalf of the Commissioner Hahn and the High Representative, one of the people actively involved in writing the European Neighbourhood Policy Review, I can reveal that in the final phase of drafting, one of the areas that the High Representative personally oversaw in the finalization was the references on gender equality, which I think is, shows the level of importance that we attach to this issue. And I thought before I zoom in on the 20 deliverables, because of the broader context of the review of European neighbourhood policy, which covers the South as well as the East, I just recall some of the key principles of those, and then I'll zoom into the relevance for the 2020, which we've now 2 years further down the road. And I would just say that even then, it was evident that we wanted to put at the heart of neighbourhood policy review the work on the Gender Action Plan 2016 to 2020. We were very, very clear that we, in taking forward neighbourhood policy on this important issue of gender equality, we should be fully in line, and we've just been discussing that in the Social Affairs Committee with Agenda 2030, and in particular I found extremely enlightening and helpful the report from the Baku conference that focused in particular on the goals 3 and 5, but also I thought was very insightful on the role of parliamentary oversight in ensuring gender equality. And I think the other aspect that the High Representative was very keen to ensure was properly reflected was commitments to do with UNSCR Resolution 1325, which I think is a key consideration. And all of this, we already made a commitment then that when we take forward our policy and programming, that gender equality should be addressed as a cross-cutting issue. In the review itself, and then I'm coming to 20 deliverables, we highlighted in particular 4 areas, starting with physical and psychological integrity. And this is the 1325 Agenda of Commitments, amongst others. And I think we just discussed how important a role this has in terms of all aspects of... we talk a lot about conflict resolution, but we shouldn't forget conflict prevention in that regard, which I believe is particularly important. Secondly, obviously a much discussed and key issue is social and economic rights and empowerment. And thirdly, the broader questions of access to all forms of services, justice, education and health, to name but 3. And fourthly, ensuring women's voices heard in leadership roles across our policies. And so I think you can see that from the outset of the Neighbourhood Policy Review, we made a very strong commitment to gender equality. And so it's natural that when we came to prepare the first draft of the 20 deliverables for 2020 almost a year ago, we quickly decided that whereas we had 4 priorities, governance, economy, connectivity, and people-to-people, gender equality was one of the 3 issues that we felt was cross-cutting and needed to be an active issue addressed in all 4 priority areas. And I think that's extremely important. Once again, you see our strong commitments to the Gender Action Plan and to the UNSCR 1325, as I've just said. So what are we going to do about it? I think that as the director responsible for programming for the region and for 5 of the 6 Eastern Partnership countries, and working very closely with my good colleague Peter Wagner, who many in this room in Ukraine will know well as the director for Ukraine, we wish to put this at the heart of our programs moving forward. And I'm actually very much looking forward to this afternoon's debate, because we don't have a monopoly on the best way of doing this, and I think what better way than listening at this key stage. We're at the start of programming for the next 4-year period, 2017 to 2020. We of course have our ideas, which I'm glad to share with you, and I think I will highlight a number of our flagships that we've managed to develop so far, but what I'm most hoping for from this afternoon's discussion is to harvest a number of suggestions and ideas from your side, as I've managed to do earlier in the day on other areas. And I mean, I would highlight, for example, a particularly successful initiative that we've done in partnership with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is Women in Business. And to pick but one example, and I was visiting recently Armenia, and we were able to meet a tea producer who has a company of 40 women who has managed to set up a business that works on seasonal labor, which has allowed 40 women to have seasonal employment who otherwise had been unemployed in a sector that's a key export potential. And I picked this one example. I could have picked from the other 5 countries, but this is one I personally visited recently and struck me as a very successful and fruitful initiative, and is an example of which there are other kinds, of course, in the other partner countries. But I think this Women in Business initiative, which is a very substantial investment of over 50 million euros, is producing fruit and is something that we should continue to build on. I would say we've just come from a discussion with youth representatives, and one of our commitments you will see in the 20 deliverables for 2020 is to ensuring that at least 50% of our work with youth has partners who are women or girls, and I think that's an important and obvious commitment. And equally, we can further develop, I'm sure, initiatives that will support empowerment of women and women in leadership roles, which on the political participation, I listened with great interest to the discussion following what I must say I found a very helpful and thought-provoking report from the rapporteurs, Mrs. Grappini and Mrs. Vieselova, that we've just been discussing in the other room. So I'm conscious that we're tight for time, and I would just like to underline that from the side of the European Union institutions, we're very committed to working with all 6 Eastern partners on, I think, what is an exciting agenda, both on policy terms, and I think that's clear from the commitments both in the European Neighbourhood Policy Review and in the draft summit declaration. And you can see that in all the contributions, be it from this House, the European Parliament and Eastern Euronest acting together, be it from civil society, be it from youth, that this is an absolutely key issue. And so the main question is, how can we be most effective in implementing those policy commitments? And from my perspective, in terms of how we shape the support of EU assistance going forward. And I very much look forward to the debate and, of course, be glad to answer any questions that anybody may have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Lawrence, and I'm glad that we have timed this debate so well as well in terms of shaping your thoughts for the next 4 years. I genuinely also really welcome the fact that this is one of the cross-cutting issues that is on the agenda. And now I would like to open the floor as well so that we can fulfill Lawrence's hopes of shaping his agenda for the next 4 years, and ask colleagues if they would like to contribute in terms of the gender perspectives for the 20 deliverables for 2020. Colleagues, or indeed other people that are here from other organisations, as I mentioned earlier on. And I would also ask, as we don't all know each other in the room, if you would introduce yourself and where you're from as well. Thank you. It is the end of a long day, I do know that. So, I think, yeah, there was, Lawrence made mention earlier on of the report that we were discussing in the Social Affairs Committee earlier on, which was about women in work and women and work. And it was indeed it is a very good report, and I look forward to it going through plenary as well. And there were 2 things in particular that you mentioned that I think really do matter. Well, everything you mentioned matters, but in two things that jumped out. One was about youth and working with, in particular, working with girls in your work with young people. But it's certainly an issue in EU countries, and I suspect it is also an issue in Eastern partner countries, which is that of STEM subjects. Yeah, we have, where you see a skills gap in economies, it is almost always matched by a gender gap in those areas as well. And actually looking at focusing on ensuring that girls are actively engaged in science, technology, engineering and maths subjects would be, I think, a really important factor. And the other point is one that you obviously have already, are clearly already on as an issue, which is that of political engagement. Now, part of that is political engagement in schools and in education systems, so that young people of all, of both genders, but particularly girls, see this as being part of their right, but part of their future, part of, an important part of citizenship is participation, and that includes participation in political processes as well. So those were the two particular highlights for me of your contribution. I'm hoping that other colleagues may indeed also have some other things that perhaps they now would like to add into the debate around the 2020 agenda. Just in case this is about to be. Please.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Mr. Meredith. Dear colleagues, I'm Morten Enberg. I'm the head of Council of Europe in Ukraine. And I don't want to precede the discussion we're going to have a bit later, but I was just wondering, the European Union is, of course, extremely important for the Council of Europe. And we have a lot of joint projects together. But I was wondering to what extent it would be possible for you to put also ratification of the Istanbul Convention as part of the lobbying work that you are doing, or perhaps even mentioning it. I don't know if this is done, or maybe it's just not possible, but it's something that we are working very hard with here in Ukraine. We will talk about that later, and also important for the other Eastern Partnership countries that has not yet ratified.
I am just doing a final check to see if there are any other contributions on this particular point at this meeting. It does not, of course, exclude us from getting in touch at a later stage to say that these are the things that we particularly would like you to pursue. But thank you, colleagues, and I don't know if there are any responses, concluding remarks you'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think those are well-targeted points. Let me start with the last point, and it gives me an opportunity to underline that indeed a lot of our work in the governance area more broadly, but including in terms of our gender work, is of course in partnership with the Council of Europe. That's, as I was with Commissioner Hahn for the 10th anniversary earlier this year of our cooperation with the Council of Europe, that's something I particularly wish to highlight. And that's relevant to your point, Claire, about our work in women in leadership and women in political participation in particular. So that's one area. I can confirm to our good friend from the Council of Europe based here that in the 20 deliverables for 2020, for those, and you do have the document in front of you in your packs, if you look at the point 2, which is on page 8 in the document pack, you can see that the gender equality and non-discrimination, you can see exactly what our commitments are, and I'm pleased to confirm that ratification of the Istanbul Convention is indeed a target by 2020. So that's important. And lastly, if my Deputy Director General Katerina Matanova were here, and she would have very much liked to have been in Kiev in general and in this forum in particular, I can confirm, she would have certainly made the point that is rightly highlighted in the report about STEM, and I know that that's something that she's personally very committed to us working with. I think I have to say that we are highlighting education as part of our broader youth and education package, and I'm sure that that's something that we will be taking into account in cooperation with a number of our important international partners, not least, but not only, with, for example, the World Bank, who are very active on these issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, and thank you again as well for being here this evening. And as I say, we will keep in touch on this subject. Thank you. I would now like to in a seamless way, continue with the debate, following on from the last contribution on the floor as well, to an exchange of views with Martin Enberg and Irina Suslova. Martin is head of office for the Council of Europe in Ukraine, and Irina is chair of the subcommittee on gender equality and non-discrimination of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Human Rights, National Minorities and International Relations, on the problems in the ratification and the implementation of the Istanbul Convention in the Eastern Partnership states. So, if I could hand the floor to Martin.
Thank you so much, honourable members of Parliament, dear colleagues. It is indeed a pleasure and a privilege for me to have the opportunity to speak to you a little bit tonight, about the importance of the Istanbul Convention. I will give a little bit more of a broader picture on why it is needed, and then my colleague Irina will talk a little bit more about the specific situation regarding the ratification in Ukraine. The Istanbul Convention is indeed a very comprehensive approach to fighting violence against women. It not only provides new standards, but it also sets standards for future legislative work to have as an instrument of interpretation of future legislation. In Ukraine today, we definitely see that there is a lack of coordination between different authorities, which does not allow to adequately tackle violence against women and domestic violence. The establishment of such things as a national coordination mechanism, as is mentioned in the Istanbul Convention, would enhance cooperation between all relevant authorities in this field. When we talk about violence against women and domestic violence, these are really complex problems and can be effectively solved only through an integrated approach, taking into account all aspects of the problem from prevention to prosecution. The Istanbul Convention does indeed provide this integrated approach. We talk about the 4 Ps of the Convention, meaning prevention, protection, prosecution, and integrated policies. Current legislation is, as I mentioned, insufficient. What the Istanbul would do, apart from providing service to the legislation, it provides services to victims of violence. We're talking about shelters, we are talking about the 24/7 hotline, special services, including psychological assistance to victims of domestic violence. We provide training for law enforcement agencies so that they will be better equipped to handle victims of domestic violence, which is not always the case, as I'm sure we're all aware. Currently, some forms of violence against women and domestic violence are not defined as criminal offences, and therefore they are not punishable. The Istanbul Convention defines various forms of violence against women and domestic violence as criminal offences, and this then of course include rape, sexual harassment, forced marriage, different forms of domestic violence. As I mentioned a little bit, we spoke about the law enforcement agencies. This is also important. The Convention will enhance the prosecution as well as it requires the prohibition of the mandatory reconciliation and mediation. When we talk about prosecution, it will, for instance, it will introduce something that we are talking about as ex officio proceedings, meaning it will allow prosecutions of more severe forms of violence to go ahead without the victim's report or complaint, and allow proceedings to continue in the event of withdrawal of such a complaint, which is unfortunately quite often the case due to pressure or threats from the other party. In Ukraine, as we see it, the Convention would definitely improve the situation of victims by putting their rights and needs at the heart of the issue. It would better address the needs of victims by providing better and more services, as I mentioned again, including establishment of a hotline, shelter support services as well. It would provide much better data collection that would allow us to better understand the scale of the problem and, as a consequence, also more adequately address the problem. Also, of course, to improve prosecution of the perpetrators, this sends a clear message that violence against women and domestic violence is not accepted in the society. The Convention, as we see it, would also assist and help tackling negative stereotypes, help to address the culture where acts of violence against women are justified and sometimes even condoned. And it would define clearly different forms of violence against women and domestic violence, again, as well as prosecution of these crimes. It would also improve victims' access to justice. I won't go into the more specifics of the situation here. I will allow my friend and colleague Irina Suslova to do that. I will, of course, be happy to answer any questions later on as best as I can. But for now, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd now like to pass the floor to Irina as well.
Уважаемые коллеги, я рада всех приветствовать и представителей парламентов стран Восточного партнерства, и представителей общественных организаций от имени Верховной Рады Украины сегодня на этом форуме. Противодействие гендерно обусловленному насилию сегодня является одним из самых острых и болезненных проблем для Украины. Это и в том числе связано с войной, которая происходит на востоке Украины. Она усугубила существующие системные проблемы и привела к существенному росту уровня насилия в отношении женщин и домашнего насилия из-за стресса, который вызван вооруженным конфликтом. В 2017 году полиция зарегистрировала 60 тысяч заявлений, связанных с насилием в семье. Сейчас следственные подразделения завершили 439 уголовных производств. Анализ дел подтверждает гендерный характер этого явления. Так, 90% лиц, совершивших домашнее насилие, это взрослые люди мужского пола, а 71% пострадавших – это женщины. И это всего лишь небольшая часть того, про что мы знаем, ведь всем известно, что не все женщины обращаются за помощью к правоохранительным органам. По результатам исследования Фонда народонаселения ООН и организации Украинский центр социальных реформ в 2016 году 600 женщин в год погибает в Украине от насилия. Экономика в связи с этим теряет 1 миллион 500 тысяч гривен. И вы знаете, мне хочется отойти от цифры и рассказать про случай, который состоялся позавчера в одном из городов Украины, это город Тернополь, Западная Украина, когда женщина приняла решение выброситься с окна 2-го этажа только по той причине, что муж ее чуть не убил молотком. И она понимала, что выбросившись со 2-го этажа, вероятность того, что она останется жива, намного выше, нежели она останется дома у своего мужа. И, к сожалению, Уголовный кодекс сегодня не предусматривает соответствующей ответственности за такое насилие в семье, которому подвергается женщина. Стоимость совокупных экономических затрат общества из-за насилия в отношении женщин составляет $208 миллионов в год, что равно целому бюджету города Одессы. Только из-за потери от нетрудоспособности женщин, пострадавших от насилия, украинская экономика теряет $2,5 миллиона в год. Расходы на оказание услуг, связанные с реагированием на случаи насилия, включая расходы на правоохранительные органы, судебную систему, социальные расходы, медицинское обслуживание, специализированные расходы, составляют $14 миллионов 200 тысяч в год. Поэтому для Украины необходима ратификация Стамбульской конвенции и имплементация ее положений в украинское законодательство. Уверена, что ратификация и практическая реализация ее норм поможет преодолеть насилие и обеспечить большее равенство между мужчинами и женщинами. Ведь насилие в отношении женщин вытекает из отношения неравенства между женщинами и мужчинами в обществе и закрепляется через культуру терпимости к дискриминации. Перед нами остро стал вопрос на законодательном уровне обеспечить следующие вещи. Первое. Гендерное понимание домашнего насилия. Второе. Усовершенствовать уголовное законодательство в сфере противодействия насилию в отношении женщин и домашнего насилия. Третье. Выполнить комплексные обязательства по предупреждению повторной виктимизации, по установлению защитных мер, включая защитные предписания и ордера. На решение этих вопросов, в частности на усиление уголовной ответственности за насилие в отношении женщин и домашнее насилие, были направлены следующие законопроекты. Один из законопроектов за номером 5294 о предотвращении и противодействии домашнему насилию. И второй законопроект 4952 о внесении изменений в некоторые законы Украины в связи с ратификацией Конвенции Совета Европы о предотвращении насилия над женщинами и домашнего насилия и борьбу с этим явлением. Стамбульская конвенция. К сожалению, в связи с тем, что в украинском парламенте существует такой себе талибан, который прикрывается традиционными ценностями, украинский парламент так и не смог ратифицировать Стамбульскую конвенцию. И мне, как главе подкомитета по вопросам гендерного равенства и недискриминации, который каждый день встречается с женщинами, пострадавшими от домашнего насилия, которые понимают, что в принципе не имеют никаких оснований и возможностей помочь этим женщинам ни приютом, ни психологической помощью, я не могу им оказать ее, ни юридической. И понимая масштабы этой катастрофы, мы понимаем, что сегодня ответственность за каждую жертву домашнего насилия лежит непосредственно на каждом члене парламента, который не поддержал ратификацию Стамбульской конвенции весной в украинском парламенте. С другой стороны, я как председатель подкомитета по вопросам гендерного равенства и недискриминации и член межфракционного объединения «Равные возможности» и дальше будем работать над тем, дабы не просто были имплементированы через принятие двух законов отдельные положения по ратификации Стамбульской конвенции, а была ратифицирована конвенция как документ базовый и рамочный, в рамках которого будут наработаны законопроекты, которые будут реализовываться. И тут мне хотелось бы отдать должное украинскому представительству Совета Европы, которые постоянно, эффективно и планово работают с украинскими парламентариями, разъясняя им необходимость ратификации Стамбульской конвенции как документа, который является базовым и рамочным по противодействию домашнего насилия в странах Европейского Союза. Кроме того, принятие данных законопроектов будет способствовать гармонизации украинского законодательства с европейской, в частности, доступа пострадавших от насилия к правосудию и специализированным услугам по реабилитации и социальной интеграции, принятие согласованных стандартов работы с жертвами насилия, сбора статистики о всех видах насилия в отношении женщин. Среди проблем еще следует выделить также недостаточный уровень гендерной чувствительности судей и низкий уровень понимания причин и последствий такого насилия, а также отсутствие практических навыков его идентификации. Поэтому особого внимания требует вопрос осведомленности судей с практикой Европейского суда по правам человека, резолюциями, комментариями ООН, рекомендациями комитетов министров Совета Европы, в частности, о создании особых условий допроса для жертв и свидетелей насилия, обеспечении чувствительного регламента судебного процесса, который бы позволял избегать повторной виктимизации. Не секрет, что рассмотрение дел в суде является утомительным для женщин, пострадавших от насилия. Нередкие случаи запугивания, нечувствительности к психологическому и физическому состоянию жертвы. По данным исследований, в Украине дела о преступлениях против половой неприкосновенности и половой свободы лиц часто рассматриваются в открытых судебных заседаниях, хотя статьей 20 Уголовно-процессуального кодекса Украины допускается закрытое судебное рассмотрение подобных дел по мотивированному постановлению суда. Я думаю, что каждый из вас, кто общался с жертвой или с пострадавшей от домашнего насилия, понимает, что в принципе не все способны выступать в суде на открытых заседаниях и поднимать те вопросы, на которые многие из нас вообще, о которых многие из нас вообще не говорят. Судьи проявляют слишком снисходительное отношение к обидчикам, в частности, назначают минимальное наказание, предусмотренные санкции соответствующей статьи, а потерпевшие по делу редко заявляют гражданские иски, то есть право на возмещение материального и морального вреда остается в принципе в нашей стране нереализованным. Согласно информации омбудсмена, уполномоченного по правам человека, 92,5% опрошенных судей местных общин судов Украины считают несовершенным предусмотренный законодательством Украины механизм защиты жертв домашнего насилия. Особую актуальность приобретает вопрос усовершенствования механизмов защиты жертв и ответственности за совершенные насильственные действия. Важной задачей является усиление парламентского контроля в сфере предотвращения и противодействия гендерно обусловленного насилия. Также необходимо развивать кооперацию парламента с центральными и местными органами исполнительной власти, организациями гражданского общества. В нашей стране часто именно общественные организации являются таким себе двигателем изменений, адвокации, разработки и внедрения программ по защите прав женщин. И, конечно, в поле нашего постоянного внимания вопросы гендерного просвещения. Среди прочего, преодоление гендерных стереотипов в обществе, которые очень часто являются основой для дальнейших действий, в том числе и обидчиков. Ведь они являются причиной неравенства, которое, как известно, вызывает еще большую уязвимость женщин к дискриминации и насилию. Я очень надеюсь на то, что мои коллеги по парламенту все-таки прислушаются и к рекомендациям Совета Европы, и к мнению стран, которые ратифицировали базовый документ, который помог наладить единый национальный механизм по предотвращению домашнего насилия. И в ближайшее время в стенах украинского парламента мы все-таки сможем вынести этот вопрос не просто в повестку дня, а и получить большинство, необходимое для ратификации данного документа и его дальнейшей имплементации в национальное законодательство. А пока я хочу сказать о том, что мы не устанем напоминать всем членам украинского парламента, моим коллегам о том, что все те, кто не голосует за ратификацию Стамбульской конвенции, несут персональную ответственность перед жертвами домашнего насилия. Спасибо и готова ответить на все вопросы.
Thank you, and thank you both for the presentations. The Istanbul Convention is a really important outcome of the Council of Europe's work, and I think that was very clearly demonstrated by the account that Irina has given, both of the legislative requirements, but also actually of the experiences of the people that this convention is in place to protect. So again, thank you both for those comments. Once again, it's my pleasure to open the floor, and I have an indication from the back, and two more indications as well. Thank you.
Мы говорим об экономике, о дискриминации женщины, но мы не говорим о проблеме личности вообще самой женщины. Женщины с заниженной самооценкой, с непониманием ценностей и прав и обязанностей, претерпевают унижение и разрушение психики, что способствует также и разрушению жизни. Я думаю, что стоит понимать нюансы непринятия конвенции, поэтому к вам вопрос соответствующий, какие нюансы поспособствовали тому, что не принята эта конвенция, то есть ратификацию этой конвенции стамбульской отменили.
Ну, на самом деле...
Sorry, can you bear with me 1 second? I think because we have a number of indications of people to speak, if we take all of the contributions, and then then I will ask you to come in at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction. I have rather comment than question. Fortunately, Georgia has already ratified the Istanbul Convention in spring 2017, this year, and more than 20 amendments were made to different laws, including the criminal law of Georgia, together with the ratification of the convention. But this is not enough. In fact, just having the good law is not enough to solve the problem existing in Georgia among other countries as well. So we face the situation when the police is not sensitive towards the issue, and the courts are also, judges are not sensitive, and it has been mentioned by the reporter. So if we don't have the good enforcement of the good laws, then nothing will change. So we need to work on the better training of the police maybe, and the judges too, so that they really see the problem and they understand it and they feel it. Because if they don't admit that such crimes are crimes, then nothing will change. In Georgia now we are working on different approaches toward this problem, and I hope that in the nearest future the situation will improve a lot.
Thank you, Irina. Heidi.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing with us your insights on the problems. And as we are discussing problems in the ratification and implementation of the Istanbul Convention, I would like to raise something that I think is very deep-rooted and that has to be discussed in the open, and that is the sort of whole backlash of talking of traditional values, which to my mind most of the time imply that the woman has to know her place. And it is, of course, the man who decides the place of the woman. It's a very, let's say, one-sided idea of family. Family values is very close to traditional values of a certain kind of family. I believe that we have to address these issues. And I see that in many of the countries, I would say not so much in the EU, but in the Eastern partner countries, you see that, for instance, the church has been extremely vocal on defending what they call traditional values, and they defend the family against attacks. And so what do you think we could do? And do you perhaps see that also in the EU, I do see something arising, which is a kind of a combination of values relating to family, the right place of the woman. It sometimes is combined very much on aggression against LGBTI people and their rights, which leads into direct discrimination. It seems to me that there is a whole kind of ideology around these issues. And I see that in the EU we do have a certain emergence of, let's say, also like extreme right-wing forces that are very much attached to this kind of combination of values, which is for me a kind of a political ideology. Do you see that as well? And is there a difference between, let's say on average, the EU and the Eastern Partner countries in this respect?
Thank you, Heidi. The floor to colleagues.
Спасибо. Уважаемые коллеги, приветствую всех присутствующих здесь на женском форуме и хочу обратить ваше внимание на не менее важному вопросу о представленности женщин на уровне принятия решений. В достижении принятия того или иного закона, ратифицирования той или иной конвенции можно, если только есть женщины достаточно представлены в парламентах. Во всех уровнях принятия решений женщины представлены недостаточно. Во всяком случае, по-моему, у нас. И несмотря на то, что женщины составляют более чем 50% населения, более чем у нас хотя 60% людей, имеющих высшее образование. И использовать этот потенциал просто нельзя, недопустимо. И еще я хочу обратить на такое внимание, на внимание того вопроса, что акцент сегодня нужно ставить не настолько на равенство прав, а на обеспечение возможностей, гарантирующих достижение равных результатов. А у нас всегда идет на первом обеспечение равных прав. Сегодня, по-моему, во всех странах эти равные права уже есть. Нужно обеспечить равные возможности. И если будут равные возможности, и уже легко будет принять еще законы о семейном насилии, ратифицировать Стамбульскую конвенцию и еще такие законы.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the chance to talk about this topic and for the opportunity to discuss it, because it is actually very timely for Armenian Parliament, as we are discussing domestic law on domestic violence and we are about to adopt it, but we have huge debate on different definitions that exist in the law. So I would like to ask you to help us to elaborate a bit more about on those definitions, like psychological violence and economic violence. These two definitions may give place for misinterpretation and misuse, so that it makes concern of part of our nation just to discuss and to think that other problems may arise. And the other question that I had, I want to understand what are those side effects, if there are any, after the adoption of the law, and what kind of misinterpretation have been in place, if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandra.
Thank you, Claire. I was very impressed by the report made by our Ukrainian colleague regarding the domestic violence. And one of the things which is really striking, not that Istanbul Convention is not ratified, because there are also other countries where there is a public debate and the problems, and of course it has to be ratified and will be ratified with the time. But you mentioned that also the existing national legislation does not have provisions which provide legal defense for those women who suffer under domestic violence. You mentioned the name of a judge who considers this, but if members of Ukrainian parliament are not able to ratify Istanbul Convention, why they are not able to amend the existing legislation to provide that protection? There are no obstacles to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Pass the floor now to...
Уважаемые коллеги, меня зовут Наталья, я член украинского парламента, фракция «Оппозиционный блок», экс-министр социальной политики Украины. И я хочу в первую очередь сказать вам большое спасибо за то, что сегодня проходит на таком высочайшем уровне здесь у нас мероприятие. И мы не снимаем с себя ответственности за нератификацию Стамбульской конвенции. И я абсолютно уверена, что украинский парламент вернется к рассмотрению этого вопроса, и как минимум действующее законодательство будут имплементированы все те необходимые нормы, которые бы сегодня защитили женщин, защитили от домашнего насилия. Эта проблема есть в Украине, и в первую очередь это, конечно, ответственность украинских парламентариев. Здесь я абсолютно согласна с Ириной. Но так как я родилась и выросла на востоке Украины, и сегодня тот город, где я выросла, я там не была больше 3 лет, там сегодня идет война, я также хотела бы обратить ваше внимание на проблемы женщин и проблемы детей, которые сегодня проживают либо на неконтролируемых территориях, либо проживают в непосредственной близости зоны конфликта. Потому что социально-экономические права, доступ к образованию, медицине, социальным услугам именно женщин Востока сегодня нарушен в большей степени. И, к сожалению, украинский парламент не ратифицировал не только Стамбульскую конвенцию, но также за 4 года не принял закон о социальном статусе и социальной защите детей, женщин и мирных жителей, пострадавших в результате боевых действий. И мы считаем, что это сегодня один из самых актуальнейших вопросов, потому что по данным ЮНИСЕФ за 4 года конфликта сегодня более 1 миллиона детей нуждаются в гуманитарной помощи. Более 10 тысяч детей проживают в населенных пунктах, подвергающимся обстрелам 1 раз в месяц. Более 25 тысяч женщин, по нашей информации, нуждаются в постоянной гуманитарной и социальной помощи. Они проживают в непосредственной близости от боевых действий. Часть детей семьи были вынуждены сдать в интернаты, потому что, к сожалению, не могут обеспечить им доступ к образованию и к здравоохранению. И, конечно, это проблема, которая сегодня для нашей страны самая острая и самая актуальная. Женщины Украины объединяются. Здесь сегодня также представлены женщины, платформы «Женщины за мир». Сегодня более 100 тысяч женщин объединились и постоянно проводят гуманитарные миссии, подготовку, принимают участие в законах Украины. И мы очень благодарны в том, что начал работать ваш форум, и очень надеемся также принимать здесь непосредственное активное участие. Потому что мы абсолютно уверены, защитить сегодня женщин и детей в Украине – это защитить будущее нашей страны. И со своей стороны мы обязательно будем все делать, чтобы этот вопрос был самым актуальным в украинском парламенте, и просим вас также на это обратить внимание. Спасибо.
Thank you. Another indication?
Thank you.
2 more indications, so I'm going to have to ask the last speakers to be very brief, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Дякую. Я Тетяна Баєва, представляю жіночий консорціум України. І за останній місяць я проїхала 3 міста в Україні. Це Чернівці, це Львів, це Рівне, Хмельницький. І тільки 2 дні назад приїхала з Краматорська. І робила свій моніторинг щодо того, як жінки наші розуміють Стамбульську конвенцію, але хочу підкреслити, що це активні жінки, це депутатки, це держслужбовці, це громадські діячки. То в мене дуже невтішний результат мого моніторингу. З'ясовується, що ми дуже програємо перед церквами, релігійними організаціями, і розуміння часто жінок Стамбульської конвенції зводиться до того, що це питання груп ЛГБТ. То закликаю вас активізувати саме інформаційну кампанію, донесення до людей розуміння того, що таке Стамбульська конвенція, і ще вона направлена на підтримку і підсилення жінок. Дякую.
Thank you. And our final contributor.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Maria Ionova. I'm acting chair of the Committee on European Integration, and also I'm a co-chair of our caucus in the Parliament Equal Opportunities. So I will try to be short, but of course to pay more attention to Istanbul Convention. Some of you, for example, Dimitri, he have heard our recent debates in Budapest where we took part, thankfully, to Council of Europe. And you are absolutely right that, unfortunately, we still have too many stereotypes. And what we are now trying to explain that it's not only about women, it's about human rights, it's about international law. And also I have heard the comments if we have a mechanism. We really have very good law which has been adopted in the first reading where we have this mechanism which government has to fulfill. And we also have prepared, and it was voted in the first reading, the changes to the criminal code. Because unfortunately, violence in Ukraine, it is not a crime. And that is why of course, we can adopt this changes to the criminal codes and mechanism, but we would like to make a system. So to ratify Istanbul Convention and then to adopt the mechanism and of course to increase the responsibility. You're absolutely right that we need more media support. We need more information support. And this publicity will pressure some MPs who, as I know my colleague Irina mentioned regarding role of Council of Churches in our country. And we need positive examples, we need positive experience, and we need numbers. For example, if any country has ratified, how these numbers of domestic violence been decreased. So we need this informational campaign because unfortunately the main problem is gender. Is the understanding of this meaning gender. And a lot of MPs also, they forgot that Ukraine was one of the authors of a Convention of Human Rights. And we have already this understanding, but unfortunately we have to remind. So that is why we kindly ask you probably more to talk about this, more to talk about international positive experience, and that's we are trying to defend a human, and it means that women, because of course 90% of women are under domestic violence, but it's about human, and that is why we would like to talk more about international law, about the procedures, and also I would like to say a few words that as a caucus, and I think that the gender policy now is on a higher level, and I think that NGOs who are working with our caucus also agrees that we raise the topic of political participation of a woman on another level. We are talking more about Resolution 1325. We are talking about peacekeeping and peace-building missions and the role of women. Of course, Istanbul Convention, women economic empowerment, education, mentors. So we raised so many topics, and now as we also were one of the pushers, and now Vice Prime Minister Ivana Klimpush-Tsantsadze also is responsible for gender policy, you know, to have this coordination role, because before our Minister of Social Policy were responsible for gender policy. Now we think that each ministry, as European integration, has to be responsible and to have each separate policy on gender. So that is why we have just been started. But I think that thankfully to our partners and such strong women and men, because we don't want to divide, we will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very helpful contribution as well. I did say you were the final speaker. In fact, we have a final speaker. And I would just like to ask the co-chair of the Euronest Assembly to contribute.
So we could join only late because we had parallel meetings, but what I would like to contribute here is, because we have contacts to the churches on many issues as politicians from the European Parliament, why we shouldn't organize contacts to the church. If they are kind of a problem, then we should not limit our discussions with them on conflict solution throughout the different Eastern neighborhood countries, but we should also address this issue because we are discussing on war and war consequences, on occupation, on persecution. Why we should not make this an issue directly? Because I understand this is one of the problems.
Thank you very much. And I now give the floor back to our original speakers for any points that you would like to respond to. And again, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to be brief. Thank you.
Дуже дякую. Ну, насправді варто відзначити, що основним аргументом нератифікації Стамбульської конвенції є переклад. Do you have translation? Yes? Okay. Основним аргументом нератифікації Стамбульської конвенції у стінах парламенту є стаття 4 Стамбульської конвенції, яка містить в собі антидискримінаційний блок питань. Так? Але, на жаль, наші парламентарі досі не усвідомлюють того, що Україна вже ратифікувала не одну конвенцію, в якій саме цей антидискримінаційний блок враховано, і, в принципі, це вже імплементовано у національне законодавство. Зі своєї сторони, в парламенті ми спільно з міжфракційним депутатським об'єднанням «Рівні можливості», в яке входить більше 50 народних депутатів, проводимо інформаційну кампанію щодо того, що Україна в цілому ратифікувала ряд документів і, в принципі, готова і далі ратифіковувати Стамбульську конвенцію. Але натомість ми розуміємо, що є і певні питання, які виникають від представників Ради церков і депутатів, які працюють у стінах українського парламенту, які саме визначають роль жінки як людини, яка підпорядковується чоловіку, який визначає роль її права і її можливості. Насправді це стереотипи, з якими необхідно боротися, і над цим ми також працюємо, адже стереотипи породжують сексизм, сексизм породжує порушення прав людини породжує домашнє насильство, і це все взаємопов'язане. Я сподіваюся, що і далі з нашими міжнародними партнерами, і з представниками Ради Європи ми продовжимо працювати над тим, щоб знищувати оці міфи, які сьогодні існують щодо Стамбульської конвенції, і що це в найближчий час принесе свої результати. Але хочу відзначити, що дуже недостатньо просто ратифікувати конвенцію і імплементувати окремі її положення в національне законодавство. І тут були дуже слушні зауваження від моєї колеги з Грузії щодо того, що необхідно налагодити ефективний механізм взаємодії правоохоронних органів та органів виконавчої влади щодо імплементації положень і зробити все можливе для того, щоб цей національний механізм нарешті запрацював. І ми також паралельно працюємо з органами виконавчої влади, я сподіваюся, які зможуть все-таки після ратифікації Стамбульської конвенції досить оперативно відреагувати на ті виклики, які перед ними постануть. Тому сподіваємося і в подальшому на вашу підтримку, а в свою чергу українські парламентарі, ті, які працюють над питаннями гендерної рівності, ми робимо все, що від нас залежить. Ага. Мы делаем все, что от нас зависит, дабы ратификация состоялась. А почему раньше не сказали? Заново?
Заново.
I need sense in Russia all of my speech? Yes? Okay. Попробую. По-русски мне сложнее просто говорить, поэтому экспромтом хорошо. Основная причина и основной аргумент группы депутатов в количестве 30-40 человек, которые являются в том числе и членами коалиции в украинском парламенте, и их неголосование за ратификацию Стамбульской конвенции, это статья 4 Стамбульской конвенции, которая містить антидискриминационный блок вопросов. Вот. Но, к сожалению, эти депутаты не в курсе о том, что Украина уже ратифицировала ряд документов, в котором есть блок антидискриминации, который учитывает все те пункты, которые выписаны в статье 4 Стамбульской конвенции. И вот Рада церков ставит акцент на то, что в принципе существует нарушение, что Стамбульская конвенция влечет за собой однополые браки, это гендер и такая дефиниция, как гендер, которая сегодня не определена в украинском законодательстве, и что, соответственно, приведет к тому, что я думаю на украинском. И что, соответственно, приведет к тому, что законодательство, что Украина фактически легализирует однополые браки. Вот это основной аргумент Совета Церков. И, в принципе, Совет Церков говорит следующее, что женщина и ее права определяются тем, что скажет мужчина. То есть права женщины, ее возможности и ее роль – это, в принципе, то, что говорит мужчина, и это есть стереотипы, которые существуют в Украине и очень давно. В принципе, все начинается из стереотипов, потому что стереотипы порождают сексизм, сексизм порождает нарушение прав человека влечет за собой такие последствия, как домашнее насилие и безнаказанность этого явления. Таким образом, мы понимаем, что нам для ратификации Стамбульской конвенции сегодня в парламенте не хватает всего лишь навсего 30 народных депутатов. У нас уже все посчитано и стоят плюсики, кто голосует, кто нет, кого можно переубедить, кого нельзя переубедить. И вот наша задача сейчас, и я почему-то уверена, что Совет Европы и представители Совета Европы станут нашей основной опорой, проработать еще все эти вопросы еще раз с теми 30 депутатами, которых в принципе можно переубедить, и увидеть результат, возможно, даже на этой сессии.
Thank you very much. Please, Martin, final remarks.
Thank you so much. There was a lot of questions that I'm not sure I will be able to answer. And also concerning the colleague from Armenia, you talked about psychological violence, economical violence. This is a long discussion that we should definitely have, but perhaps it would not be very dignified to do it right now because we don't have the time to go into these details. I think it was interesting what you mentioned also about basically about the return of traditional values that was Ms. Hautala was talking about as well. Well, I think Irina just made excellent points about this and where we stand in Ukraine. What can we do to combat it? Well, that's a good question. There's one thing that we have in the Council of Europe, and it's the particular initiative of the Secretary General to combat populism here. And so this is something that we will focus on a lot in the near future. I think this is, and of course, working with youth on these, informing about the convention, about the real, what shall we call them, the standards, the human rights that Council of Europe stands for, is also something that is important to work with in schools. This is something that we are doing. We are putting in now in the Ukrainian educational reform, in the new curriculums, there will also be human rights education involved in this. This is starting from the new generations, of course. I think one thing that we also, an argument that we always make about this when we talk about that, ratifying the convention will help to decrease violence against women and increase the well-being of people. And we say that, it's when you talk about traditional family values and breaking up of families, we say that it's actually violence against women that tears up families. It's not the ratification of Istanbul Convention. I would like to say one more thing concerning, which was also mentioned by the colleague from Armenia, what we can, regarding increase of women in the decision-making positions, which is, of course, an extremely important topic. We here in Ukraine, as I know, Council of Europe and Armenia as well, we work in accordance with an action plan, and right now we are drafting the new action plan for 4 years that's going to take effect from 1st of January. And here we have made a special focus on exactly these things, to promote increased female participation in local elections, but also to promote, as you've mentioned rightly, increased increased level of females regarding decision-making processes. So I think that's an excellent point that you made. Thank you for this. Yeah, I will stop here.
Thank you very much. I think if we were physically able to, we would be continuing this debate long into the evening, given the amount of the content of the contributions that we have had, and indeed, as you've both rightly pointed out, the important follow-up that is necessary, including on the point about information and positive outcomes from those countries that have both signed and ratified the convention. But clearly there is more work to be done on this area through this forum as well. Once again, my heartfelt thanks to both of you for being here, for your contributions and your responses to this evening's debate. Thank you. Right, we now come to the next item on the agenda, she says, having knew I'd do this. I've mislaid all my papers. The right sheet. Oh, forgive me. Here we go. So here's item 4, which is future activities of Euronest's Women's Forum and the adoption of the Women's Forum's political statement addressed to the Eastern Partnership Summit in Brussels. The political declaration has been circulated previously. It is a declaration which I therefore, as it's been circulated, don't feel the need to read through word for word, but it has been circulated to outline that this forum doesn't just become a talking shop, frankly, that there is that it becomes formalized, that it is a recognized part of the architecture of the Euronest Assembly. We've seen from the fact that we had such a lively debate at this time of night in this, when people have had long days, that there is a real significance to the work that can be done by this forum. And therefore, I think it has demonstrated its own worth in its actions this evening. So the political declaration is a statement to go to the Bureau of Euronest for endorsement, but it is to outline the activities that we can take and then continue to take into the future because of the, as I say, the importance, and again comes back to the point that Lawrence made earlier on in terms of the cross-cutting nature of the work that this forum is able to do in relation to the Euronest. I have one indication of someone who wishes to speak. Please, anyone else indicate while Sandra has the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. In principle, we can support this declaration, but we would suggest 2 small changes to be more precise in the language. And I'm talking about the last sentence, which is this political declaration is transmitted to the Bureau of the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly for endorsement. I would suggest very strongly that we put not this, but any political declaration must be transmitted to the Bureau of the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly for endorsement, because it emanates from the bylaws, what we have, and that is absolutely logical if we are making statements under the frame of Euronest.
You said 2 amendments? That's one.
In the last sentence, this to change for any, which means any political declaration, and is to must be transmitted.
Please.
Если можно, вот изменения. Вот здесь написано преимущества, которые женское равенство приносит нашим обществам. По-моему, или гендерное равенство, или равенство между мужчинами и женщинами. А то женское равенство, это не используется такое.
I think that is not controversial, and we can continue with that, accept that amendment. Absolutely. Are there any other people who would like to take the floor, please?
Thank you. Just a short comment on the entitlement of our forum to have this kind of political declarations to the summit, whether this is in line with rules of procedure and whether we have this authorization to do so. This was our concern, so we just wanted to draw your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in direct response to that question, that is why we would want to submit this declaration, because the declaration itself would then be around whether or not we had the right to send the statement, because it refers to the actions that the Women's Forum can take. Just in response to Sandra's point, I would have difficulty accepting that amendment, or those amendments technically, on the basis of this is an inclusive forum. So therefore it's not that we're saying nobody can vote in this, it's that it is a separate, that it, as I say, is inclusive. I'm sorry, I've just seen Rebecca. I know that Malahat would like to speak, so I will stop here and let...
So I cannot answer before we will deal with it in the Bureau, but I would like to remind everybody that this Women's Forum has been strongly supported by many members of Euronest, including myself, and we want it, but it's an informal structure. So it's not a committee, it's not a working group, it's an informal structure. This is so far the agreement, and therefore the Bureau has to have a look, a serious look on this text, and then we have to decide how to deal with it. So, and we can't promise right now what is the result. But I think the most important thing for the Women's Forum is it takes place, and we are giving input, political input, into this possibility of good exchange, and draw practical conclusions, not only some recommendations for the structure.
My co-chair also would like to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Modi. I congratulate you for today's successful meeting. And I think we understand the concern of everybody, and I think we should find common decision to all questions. So this proposal is acceptable from the committee, yes? Yes, acceptable for my point of sight.
Are there any others that would like to take the floor at this point? Okay. Right. We have two different positions in relation to the political declaration of the committee. But I would say that this statement itself refers itself to the Bureau. So it would then be up to the Bureau what happens with this declaration. So my suggestion to the Forum would be that this declaration, as it's been circulated, would go to the Bureau, and as Rebecca rightly said, it is then for the Bureau to determine what the acceptance or otherwise of this declaration. I would clearly advocate that the declaration is accepted, but that it is going to the Bureau for them to make a decision.
We can resolve it very simply. We can say this political declaration, as well any declaration, a political declaration, must be transmitted to the Bureau. Then that is indication of this declaration, and what we consider very important, because this forum is informal, that there is in that declaration very clearly stated that Bureau has to approve all declarations made by this forum.
Rebecca.
I think so nobody can force the Bureau of Euronest to adopt whatever kind of resolution, because we are an independent body and the Women's Forum is an informal structure of Euronest. But according to our services, and they know the rules normally, the text is acceptable as it stands, but the amendments are a problem. So I would really recommend to deal with it in a very constructive way, to bring this to the Bureau and to check it tomorrow. And so everybody wants the Women's Forum to be a productive, so informal structure in Euronest, and we will find a good solution.
I have another indication, which is Heidi.
Yeah, I was very supportive when Agnieszka Kozłowska-Rajewicz came up with the idea of the Women's Forum. And of course it was an informal event, but nobody made any fuss about it. It was inspirational, and it still is inspirational, as we have seen today. So I don't quite understand why this whole discussion has to take place now.
Are there any other comments? Okay, can I just follow up on Rebecca's point, in which is we submit it as it is without the complications in relation to potential complications around the amendments, and then it goes to the Bureau, and we can then take, or the Bureau will then respond to the declaration.
Statement.
Following on from that, of course, there is also on the agenda the statement, but of course that is coming in behind the point around the declaration. But you all have also had the statement from my co-chair and I, but around the debate that we have had. I have received amendments that have come through on that statement from my co-chair indeed, and which is around the third paragraph and taking out that first sentence, which will go into a final paragraph later on. It is then an amendment at the end of that paragraph stating that we urge all partners who signed to ratify and implement fully its provisions. And then there would be the final paragraph that is the movement of the sentence which goes, "We welcome that gender equality, non-discrimination and women's empowerment are among the 2020 deliverables in the view of the 5th Eastern Partnership Summit to be held in Brussels on the 27th of November 2017. This clearly is a statement that is subsequent to the previous political declaration, but with that in mind, are there any comments or points that colleagues would like to make in relation to the statement? I will take silence as assent. And as a consequence of that, I will say at the end of this meeting, can I genuinely thank all of you for staying for the forum and for the quality of the debate, well, of the contributions that we have had, and also of the debate. And I am very mindful as well of the requests for follow-up action too, and one way or another we'll work out how we, we follow through on that. Thank you all very much, and I will see you later.